Red second-generation Lu Yuan was caught, forced to forfeit 2 billion yuan. Tiananmen mothers call for dialogue with Xi Jinping. Xi follows Deng's line, Hong Kong becomes Beijing, why is the CCP so afraid? Huarong executive's significant merits still sentenced to death, official reveals CCP's dark secrets. Nightmare, former spy reveals 1,200 CCP spies embedded in Australia. It's all covered in today's China Truths. Red second-generation Lu Yuan was caught, forced to forfeit 2 billion yuan. On May 31, China expert Tang Jingyuan reported intensifying conflicts between Xi Jinping and the second Red generation, using information from internal sources and reliable overseas channels. Key figures opposing Xi include the Lu family, represented by Lu Yuan, and the Deng faction, led by Deng Pufang, Deng Xiaoping's eldest son. Lu Yuan, son of Liu Shaoqi, a former president of China from 1959 to 1968 and a notable Communist Party leader until his downfall during the Cultural Revolution, has faced investigations under the guise of anti-corruption by Xi. Lu Yuan was reportedly forced to surrender 2 billion yuan, about $281.4 million, in assets to barely pass the scrutiny. Though Lu has not been officially prosecuted, he remains under tight surveillance, living like an invisible prisoner. Additionally, significant changes are occurring within Xi's power structure. He has established several covert departments under the National Security Commission, rapidly expanding their authority and effectively taking control of vast segments of the political, legal, and intelligence systems. This new structure is rife with internal conflict, evidenced by the mysterious deaths and disappearances of key officials. Lu Yuan initially supported Xi's anti-corruption drive alongside Hu Yaobang's sons, Hu Deping and Hu Dehua, also from the second Red generation. However, as Xi moved towards conservatism after the 19th National Congress, their opposition grew. Contrary to expectations of Lu Yuan rising within the ranks, potentially to a position within the Central Military Commission or as secretary of its Discipline Inspection Commission, he was sidelined from the military and political spheres and reassigned within the National People's Congress. Another notable figure from the second generation, Lu Yazhou, son-in-law of former President Li Xianyan, was also purged. U.S.-based scholar Wang Huntao confirmed with Lu Yazhou's relatives and reported to Epoch Times that the retired general had received a life sentence. Wang suggests that Lu Yazhou's downfall may have been due to his differing views from Xi on issues like the Taiwan Strait, military development, and the role of the second Red generation. Exiled scholar Yuan Hongbing also told Epoch Times that many in the second Red generation oppose Xi's autocratic rule, which dismantles the oligarchic structure established by Deng Xiaoping, denying other Red families a share in the supreme power. This has led to widespread dissatisfaction and even hatred towards Xi. Since the start of Xi's third term, numerous high-ranking military and defense officials have been dismissed, including 2 former rocket force commanders, Li Yuchao and Zhou Yanning, and Defense Minister Li Shangfu. Mr. Yuan disclosed a significant scandal within Xi's family army, involving over 170 senior officials developed since the 20th National Congress, which is a significant blow to Xi. Mr. Wang Huntao has remarked that Xi, fearing assassination, is extraordinarily cautious. His security measures surpass those of any prior leader in the history of the Communist Party. The influential second Red generation is under strict surveillance and constrained from achieving significant influence, yet Xi might still be killed by those close to him. Tiananmen mothers call for dialogue with Xi Jinping. On the eve of June 4, the Tiananmen mothers, a group of relatives of the victims, released a short film outside of China and read an open letter, appealing once again for dialogue with the Chinese government. They reasserted their 3 demands: truth, compensation, and accountability. In detail, the letter declares that the June 4 massacre is a historical tragedy that the CCP government cannot ignore and must address and explain to the people. For 35 years, these families have endured the agony of losing their loved ones, many of whom were parents who have since died. If the government earnestly addresses this tragedy, it would greatly comfort the surviving parents. The Tiananmen mothers have expressed their dissatisfaction with the government's 35 years of silence and their refusal to accept or tolerate the CCP's skewed historical narrative of the 1989 student movement, which distorts the facts and ignores the truth. On the early morning of June 4, 1989, the CCP deployed the military to brutally suppress students and citizens of Beijing who were advocating for freedom and democracy, resulting in a massacre that shocked both China and the international community. The Tiananmen mothers demand in their open letter that the government provide accurate information about how many people died, were injured, or were affected. The government owes it to society to publish the names of the deceased and issue a public apology. Since 1989, the CCP has referred to the June 4 incident as the political turmoil at the turn of spring and summer of 1989, consistently characterizing it as counter-revolutionary riot. On November 16, 2021, the CCP's 19th Central Committee's 6th plenary session briefly mentioned the June 4 democratic movement and the Tiananmen massacre in a resolution, still framing it in terms of political turmoil and opposing turmoil. Regarding this matter, Xing Xuguang, a scholar in the United States and a witness to June 4, told Radio Free Asia that from the CCP's perspective, acknowledging that the June 4 shootings were a grave crime would leave no room for retreat. Xing said, "How can you admit to being wrong in killing? Xi Jinping and the Communist Party are interdependent. If I were to vindicate June 4, it would highlight my wise decision, but the Communist Party would have to step down. He needs to consider this. Do you think he would vindicate June 4? I believe he won't, as his ideology and caliber lack such awareness." During the June 4 period, Xi Jinping was managing the Ningda area in Fujian province. According to official media, she actively cooperated with the CCP Central Committee to prevent students from Zhejiang from moving across provinces to Fujian for protests. She also instructed all public security forces in the area to closely monitor activities and ensure stability. After the student movement, on July 30, 1989, she met and took photographs with public security officials, reiterating his commitment to maintain high consistency with the Party Central Committee and to resolutely follow the Party Central Committee's commands. Unlike Xi Jinping, who became the party secretary of Fuzhou City the following year, several CCP officials who opposed suppressing the student movement were either dismissed or sidelined. The Tiananmen Mothers is a rights group established by the families of those who perished in the June 4 incident, represented by spokesperson Yu. Each year on the anniversary of June 4, they issue an open letter to the authorities, demanding clarity about the events, compensation for the families, and accountability for those responsible. This year's letter was signed by 114 family members. However, just like the June 4 incident itself, this open letter can only be published outside the CCP's firewall, as it is blocked on the mainland internet. Zhang Xianling, a member of the Tiananmen Mothers, wrote on the 15th anniversary of June 4 about how she recounted her son Wang Nan's death and the incident hundreds of times, saying, "My tears have dried up, but I deeply feel that my suffering is not just personal or confined to my family, it is the suffering of our entire nation." Zhang Xianling's husband, Wang Fondi, a retired professor from the China Conservatory of Music, urged his wife to seek vindication for June 4 and restore the truth and justice for the victims until his death on December 8, 2017. On May 31 this year, commentator Du Jing wrote in Up Media, a Taiwanese publication, that as long as the leaders uphold the CCP's one-party dictatorship, they will never be able to fully redress the events of June 4. What is referred to as redress amounts to merely correcting the party's errors, yet the party's crimes are indelible. History has shown that the CCP's nature is inherently bad and incapable of self-correction. Its crimes are so egregious that they will inevitably lead to its downfall. She follows Deng's line, Hong Kong becomes Beijing, why is the CCP so afraid? 5 years ago, on the eve of the 30th anniversary of June 4, 2,000 photos documenting this democratic movement suddenly emerged. The photographer, Lu Jian, shared in interviews with several overseas Chinese media that on June 4, he went to a hospital near Tsuiwei Road in Beijing and saw around 20 to 30 people lying on the ground, all shot dead. He said, "It was terrifying and unbearable. It was too tragic." At that time, he was just a child, politically naive, and only wanted to document the movement through his lens. Initially, he chose to forget, but one day in late 2018, he mentioned June 4, 1989 to his daughter. She was surprised and asked, "What is June 4, 1989? This made him realize that this part of history had been completely erased from Chinese education. He felt people should know the true history, so he decided to release the photos. Mr. Sun, a former university student and June 4 witness now living in Seattle, USA, told Hope Radio, "Keeping this memory alive means preserving the true history of the Chinese people. Only then can the truth be restored one day and the CCP be held accountable for its crimes against the Chinese people. Only then can our nation have hope." Another June 4 witness, writer Ma Jian, now living in the UK, said, 35 years have passed, but our belief remains unchanged: the Chinese Communist Party must fall." After the June 4 incident, Deng Xiaoping, the former CCP leader who ordered the crackdown, commended the military's actions. In a segment that CCTV edited out and which circulated among the public, Deng Xiaoping addressed the senior officers of the martial law troops in the capital, saying, "This is a serious political test for our army, and we have passed it without causing casualties to these individuals. If anyone had suggested using tanks for suppression, we would have had to create nationwide confusion about right and wrong. Therefore, I want to thank the PLA commanders and fighters for their responsible attitude." Netizens pointed out that his words reeked of bloodshed. Why did Deng Xiaoping take such brutal measures? Deng Xiaoping is often remembered as the chief architect of China's reform and opening up, a policy linked to enlightenment and progress. So why would an enlightened leader act so brutally? Chinny Zhang, a researcher at Academia Sinica in Taiwan, addresses this in his article The Spectre of June 4, also on Deng Xiaoping's line. Chen notes that Deng Xiaoping's reform policy, centered on economic development, was not ultimately aimed at economic growth. Instead, its primary purpose was to use economic progress to strengthen the CCP's single-party rule. In a 1979 speech, Deng introduced the four upholds: upholding the socialist path, the people's democratic dictatorship, the leadership of the Communist Party, and Marxism-Leninism and Mao Zedong thought. The June 4 incident threatened CCP leadership, which Deng could not tolerate. This is evident from his June 9, 1989 speech to senior martial law officers, where he said, "This turmoil was bound to happen sooner or later." Their main slogans were to overthrow the Communist Party and the socialist system. We must never forget how cruel our enemies are. We should not forgive them even 1%. Xi Jinping continues Deng Xiaoping's line, "Hong Kong becomes Beijing." In recent years, some have accused Xi Jinping of abandoning Deng Xiaoping's reform and opening up policies, even suggesting a return to the Cultural Revolution. However, the above article explains that Xi's era of extreme political tightening, high-tech social surveillance, and governance through self-censorship and intimidation are all rooted in the suppression of June 4 and the resulting offensive stability maintenance. From Jiang Zemin's directive to eliminate all unstable factors in the embryonic stage, to Hu Jintao and Zhou Yongkang's stability maintenance and social management system, and now Xi Jinping's push for comprehensive national security and total social control, there is a clear continuity. Under Xi Jinping's increasing control, the CCP's promise to Hong Kong of one country, two systems for 50 years has quickly been discarded. June 4 student movement leader Wang Dan lamented that history has come to a point where Hong Kong people are facing the same kind of repression we faced 35 years ago. Ironically, a young Chinese nationalist recently tried to prove that living in China is very free by betting with a Taiwanese netizen. He uploaded the world-famous Tank Man photo on Weibo, only to have the entire post deleted and his account silenced shortly after. June 4 candlelight vigils spread worldwide. On May 26, Wang Dan shared his thoughts with Radio Free Asia during a flower-laying ceremony at York University in Toronto, part of a democracy movement event in Canada. He said, "The CCP remains very sensitive, showing they are still fearful of the commemoration of June 4. This itself is a form of political pressure on them. As long as we exist overseas and can make the Hong Kong government feel the pressure and remain tense, we are still making an impact. About 40 people attended the event. That evening at 8 p.m., about 20 members of the Chinese Democratic Party laid flowers at the June 4th Memorial at the University of Toronto. According to Taiwan's Chasing News, various June 4th memorial events were held in numerous areas worldwide. Huarong executive's significant merits still sentenced to death, official reveals CCP's dark secrets. Bai Tianhui, former general manager of Huarong International, was recently executed for corruption, becoming the second top finance executive to be executed, following former Huarong chairman Lai Xiaomin. The Tianjin Second Court's verdict noted that although Bai exposed significant crimes committed by others, his contributions were not enough to merit leniency. Bai was a former subordinate of Lai Xiaomin, whose verdict also highlighted his significant contributions. The fact that two senior executives from the same company were executed despite their contributions has raised eyebrows. Commenting on this issue, Yuan, a Chinese legal scholar living in Europe and former head of the legal office of the Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region government, revealed that Bai Tianhui had exposed many officials who had bribed him or engaged in corrupt dealings. Du explained that many imprisoned CCP officials face a dilemma, whether to betray their powerful patrons. Almost every detained official hopes that their patrons will protect them or ensure their family's well-being. Blowing the whistle prematurely can be fatal. He said, the reality is that key figures often plant informants within disciplinary committees to prevent the spread of information. These committees typically advise officials under investigation to only admit to their own misdeeds. He added that he has also seen those reckless people who try to drag others down with them, with the consequences being too terrifying. Thus, there's a saying among CCP officials, it's better to be beaten to death than to speak out, because speaking out leads to being beaten to death. Huarong Company, a state-owned enterprise founded in 1999, was set up to manage the bad debts of the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China. After Bai Tianhui was arrested, he revealed in an anti-corruption documentary that many of the illegal projects assigned to him by Lai Xiaomin were actually directives from higher-ups. Li Jun, an independent TV producer, mentioned that these leaders must be high-ranking CCP officials. Everyone knows the close relationship between Lai Xiaomin and the Xing Qinghong family, suggesting deeper involvement. According to public information, Xing Qinghong is a high-ranking member of the CCP, and known for his close ties to former CCP leader Jiang Zemin. Du remarked that both Lai and Bai came from humble beginnings without powerful backers. If they had any ties to powerful backers, those connections were indirect and outside the protective firewall. Xi Jinping faced no resistance in sentencing them to death as a warning to others, which is entirely logical. Du believes the biggest risk currently facing the CCP is financial risk. The financial system is a hotbed of corruption, and any misstep could lead to uncontrollable risks. Xi Jinping needs to create an atmosphere of extreme tension and severity within the financial system to keep corrupt elements in check. Nightmare, former spy reveals 1,200 CCP spies embedded in Australia. At the Defending Australia Summit in Canberra, a former Chinese Communist Party spy, referred to as Eric, revealed that around 1,200 CCP agents are currently operating in Australia. The startling disclosure was shared in the presence of key military figures, including Deputy Prime Minister and Defence Minister of Australia, Richard Marles. Eric emphasized the importance of Australia maintaining strong ties with the United States, citing the CCP's view of Australia as weak. He highlighted the CCP's efforts to influence the Chinese diaspora, impacting political dynamics in host countries. He warned Australia against remaining neutral when it came to supporting the United States in the event of a military conflict, as this could lead to the start of a nightmare for Australia. Additionally, former CCP diplomat Chen Yonglin, after defecting in 2005, had claimed the CCP implanted 1,000 spies throughout Australia, with many being casual informants occasionally providing intelligence to Beijing. The main mission for CCP spies is to monitor the activities of groups who oppose the CCP, especially pro-democracy activists. He further noted that the Falun Gong practitioners were a major target with over 800 adherents' names on a blacklist. The Epoch Times reported earlier this month on Eric, who cautioned that Beijing had agents all over the world to harass dissidents and attempt to get them back to China. Eric shared screenshots where CCP handlers would give him step-by-step instructions before he defected. He said missions were based around surveilling, abducting, and silencing members of the Chinese community around the world. Eric's warnings come just weeks after an incident over the Yellow Sea where a Beijing warplane shot flares into the path of an Australian Navy helicopter. The Australian aircraft was taking part in a UN mission to enforce sanctions against North Korea. Michael Shoebridge, director of defense think tank Strategic Analysis Australia, said this incident was simply the latest of many acts by the Chinese military to deliberately endanger the lives of others. He told the Epoch Times, "It is now a pattern of behavior that can only be directed by the highest level in Beijing, and that means it is a policy of CCP leader Xi Jinping's. Pretending each dangerous act by the Chinese military towards Australia's and other militaries could perhaps be just the individual tactical in the moment decision of a particular Chinese military pilot or naval captain is no longer tenable." Don't forget to leave a comment in the section below to share your opinions on today's topic with us. Make sure to like and subscribe to see more interesting topics from China Truths.